Yes.
And welcome to another edition of the MuniciPALS. Happy Victoria Day or Memorial Day, depending on where you are. I am, of course, Matthew.
Of course, here with Philip.
And we are so honored to be joined by our first sitting city council member who is also running in the by-election for mayor. Councillor Anthony Perruzza joins us. Welcome to the show, Councillor.
Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
We are so psyched. You know, when we first started this podcast in December, we put the word out to all the councillors, and nobody wanted to come on the show. So I'm very happy that you are actually the first one. So again, welcome. And right off the bat, I'd love to discuss with you what your top line plan is for the city. Maybe we can talk about some of the issues that you think need correcting within the city. And now I'm going to give you the floor. So go ahead, sir. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. It's not so much about correcting. I'm a candidate in this election for the mayoralty because as I sat on council, obviously the mayor's resignation surprised us all. I was getting settled in to be the councillor for Humber River Black Creek for the balance of the term. I just gotten reelected, and lots of work ahead of us, and was happy to do that. And then obviously, Mayor Tory's sort of surprise resignation of sorts took us all to some degree by surprise. And as I watched the sort of the by-election scenario unfold, and as people began to step forward to run for mayor, I just thought to myself, it's time, Anthony, to step up. You've got the experience. You've been here for a while. You know how the city works. A lot of these folks are missing the point. The Mayor Tory got us to convinced us to approve a budget that has, that had at the time roughly $1.5 billion hole in it. It's very, very large. He convinced us that he had a deal with both the provincial government and the federal government. With the feds, he had a deal to get some roughly $800 million in monies that the city believed that it is owed. The provincial government, kicking in the rest. We approved this budget with this big deficit in it, and then, as it turned out, as he left, it became quite clear that there was no deal, that there was no money, and that we would be in a very, very difficult position going forward. And as I watched the candidacies of some of the folks that stepped forward to run for mayor, I just thought to myself, we're in some trouble here, and that's why I put myself forward and have offered up a platform that I believe gets us moving forward. A platform that focuses heavily on affordability for people in a very, very difficult period. Inflation, as you know, has made it much harder for folks. Housing prices have climbed to the point where housing is very unaffordable for people, and irrespective of how you want your tenancy, it's somewhat out of reach. It's putting a strain on a lot of folks. So my campaign has been cobbled, and my platform has been cobbled around that. Basically, keeping taxes down, promising no tax increases for the next 3 years, no fees or TTC fare increases again for the next 3 years, offering up an affordable housing plan that makes sense, that is affordable, that comes in at under $1,000 a month. something that's very practical, on the ground, down to earth. Doesn't require city monies that the city doesn't have to do. It's a product that exists, easily to replicate, can be modified as well. So that's basically the sort of the crux of the campaign, and obviously there's a lot of other things there that we can chat about as we go forward. You don't want me eating up the next hour or so on Perruzza Says, right? Okay.
I mean, we could. That's a fun new segment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about the budget that was passed with the huge deficit. You know, whenever we're talking about budgetary issues and stuff like that, I can't help but look at the single biggest line item in the Toronto budget, which is the police budget. And I'm just wondering if there is there a discussion that can be had in terms of looking for efficiencies? Counselor, I don't know if you know this, but I was a huge Rob Ford fan, and you have to go all the way back to Rob Ford to look for a mayor who's willing to look at the police budget for efficiencies. And I'm just wondering if that is something that you would consider should you win the mayor's chair.
Yeah. So clearly we all look for efficiencies. Efficiencies is a great word, and not to look for efficiencies makes you wasteful, and makes you lax in terms of spending other people's money. And I think there's very few of us that are like that. And I'm not one of those. Absolutely. So efficiencies, you always look for that. You always, you give that direction. You set targets for the chief, for the police, to say, look, things are tough for all of us, and just a modest increase in that budget means millions of dollars annually, because we're well north of $1 billion on for the police budget. But often when you get down to the nitty gritty, while you may be able to achieve some modest and mild savings in the budget, depending on how policing is structured, and that has been done over the years. In fact, I believe Tory brought in a zero increase police budget. I think 1 or 2 years in a row during his tenure as well. Certainly. Rob Ford sought to achieve that. Was also very firm with the police, but often really what it means is fewer cops, fewer police, and I think when you get to that, I don't think that there's a public appetite for it. Look, I represent Humber River Black Creek. Jane Finch. We've and I've been a counselor there for 17 years now, and I've never gone to a community meeting or an event or a gathering of any sorts, and it's a very, very varied and mixed community, where people don't say to me, Anthony, we need more police, and we want a bigger presence all the time. Response times are down. For example, Thursday night hits, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, during the summer months and big events downtown. Basically all of the suburban police stations and police divisions, basically they go in and take out all the cops and bring them downtown to cover the big events, and we lose all of our officers. And then people say to me, Anthony, like, response times are really bad. We don't see them. We don't know where they are, and people want to feel safe in their neighborhoods. So I don't believe that reducing the numbers of police officers or cops out there is the way to go. And I don't think that the conversations need to be had, exclusively. It has to be one or the other. I think we can maintain, a decent, healthy complement of police officers out there, and at the same time be able to deal with our budgetary woes. There's, for me, there isn't any symbolism in that. I know that, for example, one of the last council meetings, not the last one, but with one before, there was a motion brought in that basically looked at taking some $90,000 out of the police budget and or trying to move it somewhere else. First of all, we can't do that. I know that councillors sometimes put together these motions and say this is what we're going to do, but the reality is on the police budget, it's the police services board that puts it together, affixes the number based on the chief's recommendation. Then it comes to council for a yay nay vote. So we can say yay, we accept it and we pay for it, and the city provides the funds, or we can say nay to that, and that's another side of the story that often gets lost at council, and we get caught up in these sort of flowery, acrimonious debates, and often they don't go anywhere. And we could say nay, in which case then the police chief could say no, sorry, not good enough, and it goes to a tribunal for arbitration. They decide whether or not we pay it or not. It's not about us withholding the money. So we like to believe we can do it. I think that politically, if push came to shove, we might be able to do it, because I think that if council held firm on something like that, then the chief and the police services board would have to politically acquiesce. But I haven't yet, in all my years there, been part of that conversation. It'd be interesting to see how that one goes.
Bill, you got a question?
I do. And I promise, Anthony, I realize we're asking a lot of money-based questions, despite the fact that me and Matthew are not money-based people. But as you mentioned earlier, we are in a close to $1 billion budget shortfall in the city. And, the city needs to be able to provide services. It needs to be able to, the city needs to be able to do what the city needs to be able to do. So I'm curious what your plan is for getting the funds to fill that budget shortfall.
Yeah. So the other component, the other part of the plan is simply this: Torontonians currently pay $2.2 billion in property taxes that we collect on behalf of the provincial government. As very few people actually know that. We just set that rate at the last council meeting. And people are going to to receive a property tax bill, and we're going to do that. And what I'm saying is, it's high time for us to stop doing that. To go out there, sort of incrementally increase people's property taxes just to collect the money to turn them over to Premier Ford and his government. That money is paid by Torontonians for Toronto. Was always intended to stay here. We can't afford to just simply turn it over to those folks. That's $2.2 billion of monies that you and I currently pay that we never see here. It just simply is shipped off to the provincial government. That has to stop. So what I'm saying is that if Perruzza is elected mayor, that's the first order of business for me, is to sit down with those folks and say, look, we can't do this anymore. We'll collect the money, but we're going to keep it.
Councillor, I want to ask about the TTC. Ridership was down during the pandemic, and now we've had service cuts, but the cost, the fare there, that's the word I was looking for. The fare went up, and all these, I don't know what you want to call them, violent attacks on the TTC. The RT is going to be put out to pasture. If it hasn't already happened, it's going to happen soon. All these things are happening, and yet something I covered during the last election in October was that the CEO got a 21% increase. Because you're a member of council, I'd love to know, because I didn't see the meeting, what the justification was, and what is your plan to get the TTC back in the shape that it was, maybe even going as far as pre-pandemic?
Yeah, so I think it's wrong-headed for us. TTC is a public service. So we need to invest in the TTC and we need to carry it. So if, for example, you're not a user of the TTC and you're a driver, I often drive. I should be contributing to the TTC because if you know people get on the TTC, it means also that it frees up more road space for people like me that are in my car, for example, when I'm not taking the TTC. So it's something we all need to contribute towards. So service, it's wrong-headed for us to cut service. It's wrong-headed for us to, to lengthen wait times for people. So we should always be looking to A, improve it, B, carry it, and C, keep fares affordable. And in fact, my view would ultimately be to have a nominal value, a nominal a fare for the TTC, if not completely make it free for folks. That's where we should go. The TTC should be seen as a public service that we all pay into and should be provided for people to use willy nilly to get around the city because it's the way that we're going to make the city work. So to look at it, and I know because I've sat on I've been on the TTC on the board itself, and they look at it as a business, as a property to manage, and while it's heavily subsidized, but to manage it in a way where they sort of operate it like a business, like a private. Transportation company, and that's wrong-headed. We can't do that. Not for a service as large as the TTC, and given its economic importance, economic and social importance to the city of Toronto.
Absolutely. Phil, did you have a question about the TTC?
Oh, actually, I realized that you had to discuss sort of set of topics, right?
Yeah.
I did not see this list of topics, so
I apologize for that.
So I'm hoping this isn't too, and it's not really a question. It's more of a thought on a policy you had tweeted about on May 16th. You talked about introducing a mayor's hotline, and I in my mind, the main part about this that I like is sort of the idea of being the mayor that is reachable. I assume that's sort of the basis for this idea. And although personally I feel like maybe a hotline, that might be hard to manage, I sort of get the sense that perhaps just having a focus on being reachable and like even responding to emails in a more timely fashion, might be a good way to, because I assume what you're trying to get at, Councillor, is that you want to be a reachable mayor, which I think is a great thing to want to go for. I just wonder, maybe where did that thought come from? Did you get the sense that maybe the mayor was hard to reach for regular people?
So the mayor under the new system is completely unreachable. The councillors are hard to reach with the new call it the mega city, and given the size of the wards or size of the districts. I know because I'm given a list of phone calls to make daily by my staff as a councillor, and they try like heck to make sure that they reduce that list to a manageable level for me all the time, because it becomes very difficult. But more importantly, it's this. So what I'm hearing more and more from folks, and it's also to some degree because we are transitioning the city from from a counter type service, whether it's whether you're wanting to pay a tax bill, whether you're looking for a building permit, whether it's because you have a broken curb in front of your house, or there's a dead tree, that you want that you want to have taken care of or removed. So there's lots and lots of issues for you to want to get a hold of the city. And we're transitioning from kind of a counter service to an online, sort of hybrid with these new phone systems now that are very complicated, make it very, very difficult to reach people. So there's a sense of frustration from folks that you can't get through to the city. So you put in a call to 311. Yeah, they give you a tracking number and all the rest of it, but sometimes you don't see any activity for weeks on end. So there's a sense of frustration from people that some things are not working. So the notion behind the line is not only to make the mayor's office and the mayor more accessible to Torontonians, and that's a part of it, but also to get a sense from people of what's working, what's not working, and what we should have as a first order of business at every one of our council meeting is that report, because senior staff, we need to find a way to hold our bureaucracy accountable for what it is that they say they're going to do and how they're going to do it. The city of Toronto is very, very big. There's lots of layers between the city managers, so the top layer of the bureaucracy, and on the ground people that are actually providing the services for folks. And we need to get the people at the top to understand where the departments are working, where they're not working. How are people accessing recreational programs, for example? I know you got to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, log on to 2-3 devices, your computer, your phone, and then hope like hell that you get through and find something for your child, right? To participate in. And often you're not able to find because they clog up so fast. And there's no way for you to do it. There's no way for you to sort of say, yeah, you get on waiting list. You have no clue as to whether or not you have a shot at a program, and it leaves parents in the lurch, it leaves kids in the lurch. Some of those things aren't working, and people don't have a place to sort of to say, hey, man, that's not working. You gotta figure out how to do that differently. You need to hear from people. So if the mayor's office is not hearing from folks in that sense, then how do you fix it? How do you deal with it? How do you hold the bureaucrats accountable?
That's amazing. Yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better answer.
Councillor, your position on the gardener, I'm interested to know about it. I'll be honest with you that I haven't had a chance to read your website. We're really, really busy here, so I do apologize. But your position on the gardener, whether you think it should be torn down, rebuilt, or a hybrid option, I'd love to hear anything you want to say about the Gardiner Expressway.
Yeah. Sure. So I first voted when Tory brought in the first option. I voted against it because I looked at it and I thought, nah, you know what? We're rebuilding it in the same place, close to the lake. Doesn't make sense. That's not good. And that vote was a very, very narrow vote. Tory won the vote, but I didn't vote for it. I didn't support it. Not because I wanted to take down a small little portion of the Gardiner, but because it didn't make sense. There were better options out there, and he wasn't considering them. So as councillors, we propose. The mayor disposes, right? So in that instance, you propose, he disposes, doesn't dispose the way you like. You say, I'm not signing on. I voted against it. But to his credit, he won it by a couple of votes. It was the larger council at the time. It was the 44 of us. The vote was like 26, 23 or 25, 20. I forget, but it was very, very close. So he went away, he looked at it. He changed the alignment, as some of us were saying, was a tighter turn radius and brought the alignment much, much closer to the rail lines, freeing up land, development land, and giving us some options for housing and other things near the lake. And then I thought, you know what, that's good. I can live with that. I can live with that as the next iteration of the Gardiner. So Gardiner's been around for 50 plus years, kind of served the purpose, running traffic along our waterfront. I got it. A lot of, urbanists, rail against the elevated highway, and oh my God, nobody builds these things on stilts anymore. But a lot of people are using it, and it connects. There's a fluid connection to the DVP. So So I supported that, and I thought that that was a good way forward. And because the other proposal that was in front of us, at the time I believe it was Kismet, she was the planner, was to take down a small little segment of it, bring it down to grade, and build this boulevard, and breaks kind of like sort of create this break in the highway. And that may ultimately be the plan, where you get rid of the Gardner altogether and you get rid of the DVP altogether, and that may be the sort of the way forward. But I didn't believe that it was that we were there at this point in time. We still need that flow. You still need to get goods and services into the downtown core. People still need to get there. People still need to get there to for work and other things. So that's what I voted for, and that's what I continue to support. Because to change tracks now in mid-stride as well, having sunk a whole bunch of money into the project so far, it doesn't make sense to me. So when people like Councillor Matlow and others, want to just always revisit because there's always another way to do stuff, at some point you got to make a decision. You got to move forward, because otherwise you're always spinning your wheels, and then you make nothing but bad decisions, bad deals, and you end up wasting hundreds of millions of dollars of useless money, and talk about inefficiency. That's one of the biggest inefficiencies that we face all the time.
Well, that's exactly what happened to the TTC. They kept having that conversation, subways or LRTs. So I understand. But in terms of the Gardner, I got to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't we one of the only municipalities that actually pays for their own highway? I think that's ridiculous. And I mean, I know Premier Ford has come out and already laid the hammer down and said, we are not going to upload the cost of the highways to the province. But I mean, that's what should happen. Would you agree with that or not?
No, I'm one of those guys that believes that all our roads, whether it's the Gardner, the DVP, all our major roads and minor roads, those are our arteries and veins. Those are the things that allow you to build the city you want. Because rail lines and hydro corridors and all of them, the more of them you control, the more of them that are under your ownership, the more of them you can change, alter, reshape in order to build the city you want. It's when you don't have the ability to do that that you get stuck. So for us to give that asset, that the Gardner or the DVP, for example, to the province, it's an asset that is absolutely invaluable to the future growth and the future prosperity of the city of Toronto. And to give control of that for a few bucks today to some other level of government or some other entity, whether it's government or private, and then hope to be able to deal with those folks down the road when you want to do stuff, is absolutely ludicrous from my perspective. So the Gardner occupies a huge tract of land that is absolutely invaluable for the city of Toronto and its future. The DVP, much the same. We have the ability to manage, alter, change traffic flow on those streets. The conversation we had about taking it down or not taking it down. The minute you give it away, that conversation becomes moot. You no longer have that the ability to city build in and around those corridors. If, for example, we had to some degree, and I'm not proposing this on your show, or I'm not doing it later, but let's say we had control over the 401, for example, the portion that runs through the city of Toronto. Just today I was making an announcement there where the Ontario, I believe it's the Ontario Trucking Association, estimates that we could probably take about 21,000 big rig truck trips a day off of the 401 and shift them onto the 407. Just truck traffic running through the city of Toronto, for example, that clogs up our 401. and my announcement today was basically saying, look, the 407 owes the province of Ontario, I don't know, a couple of $billion now in penalties and in fees because of because of COVID and because of their oh, thank you, Cal, because of their uh, their the traffic on that highway, for example. Wouldn't it be amazing if, for example, the provincial government, instead of just saying to the folks that own the 407, the interests that own the 407, to say, look, you owe us a ton of money here, okay? Why don't we shift this? Why don't we use this money to shift these 21,000 big rigs that are flowing through the 401 onto the 407 so they can bypass the city more quickly, free up some road space and eliminate some congestion on the 401, and you folks allow them to do that. Like, why isn't the government looking at that? And if we had a more direct say in those kinds of things, then you have a more direct say in influencing what happens within your jurisdiction and how we manage the city of Toronto and its issues going forward.
That's true. Yes. Phil, do you got something?
I actually feel like I can tie this together. I noticed, Councillor, today that you spent some time at the Ontario Place for All event, the birthday celebration, and I was thinking to myself what I could ask. Sort of thinking maybe what Mayor Perruzza would envision the Ontario Place to be, but of course that's not really up to the city itself. I don't believe that's because it is up to the province, right? I think. But I guess my bigger question, based on what we were just discussing, how does the city fight back against the province, when they are opposed? Which I feel like it feels like we're in that position fairly often with this particular provincial government.
Yeah. Perruzza, I don't think would fight the province. What Perruzza would do is work with the province. Look, here's what the city of Toronto, and here's what the mayor of the city of Toronto, what his or her greatest asset is the people of Toronto. They give you their support. You're in a leadership position. You're in a leadership role. You get to shape and you get to move people to a cause. If we envision an Ontario Place that's very different than what the provincial government is intending to do, if we propose some ideas, if we as a city propose some ideas in terms of how we would like to see Ontario Place build out, and if you garner enough support from Torontonians to do that, the provincial government would not be in a position to stand in its way, and to stand in our way in providing an alternate vision of what Ontario Place could be for Torontonians and for Ontarians. Because at the end of the day, that's not so. If you're I've been I've been at the province, and I've been in government at the province. It's not that the provincial folks are sitting there looking at it, and they're looking at an Ontario Place that's that had its best days, and it's a little worn for wear, and they're looking at it and are saying, okay, what do we do? And obviously as a government, they've cobbled together a few ideas. I believe they're very, very bad ideas. I think the spa ideas is just dumb as a bag of hammers, quite frankly. I mean, just imagine plopping, if you can visualize for example, the BMO Field, the stadium, and the size of BMO Field. It's its magnitude, and you take that and you plop that down at Ontario Place. That's what this spa thing is going to look like, right? So imagine that. Imagine that all shut off. You going in there, you not being able to get out anywhere because there's no access out to the public or anything like that, and completely as a private kind of facility for folks. but what's even more heinous from my perspective is that there's a huge public sector investment of some upwards of, I guess you start off at 600 million, but probably top off much more than that, because that's a very difficult place to build for this massive parking structure that they're proposing to build with public monies. So when you start to dig there and water starts gushing up from the lake, I suspect that the construction there will be very, very difficult to achieve, and it'll be very, very costly. Much like, the dome. The dome, when well, now it's called the Rogers Center, but when we first, was first built out, it was supposed to be built for a pittance of what it ended up costing, and mostly because of what you're building on. You're building so close to the lake that in order to create stability for these structures, you have to sink a whole bunch of money underwater, basically, to hold them up. So imagine that. Imagine us doing that. It just really sort of, it's unspeakable in terms of like what the idea or the proposition is. And then for someone else to come along and say, and by the way, let's move the Science Center. Let's move this beautiful, beautiful, iconic building, that was designed by this famous architect, Raymond Murayama, and take that down a building that slopes down into a ravine on very fragile land, most of it below top of bank, right? Take that and move it down to Ontario Place, just so you can drop more housing on the parking lot of the Ontario Science Center up in Don Mills there. Just absolutely like dumb as, like, talk about bags of hammers, right?
Well,
So
I will say, first of all, it'll always be the Sky Dome. Secondly, I don't know if you're aware of this, Councillor, but there is another candidate who says that by building the therm down where they want to build it, there are a bunch of different, I guess, species of animals that are going to be displaced. And isn't there an avenue in that direction that we could fight this?
So again so you can yeah, you can look at the wildlife there. You could look at the species. You could look at all of it. You could take a look at the sensitivities of the land. There's clearly there'd be lots of planning and lots of other technical issues that where you could drive in little wedges to slow up the process, to nickel and dime it, to fight it, and those are all things that you would do if you fundamentally believe that what they were doing there is wrong, and I believe that, and you would do that. But I think the fight there and the visioning has to be bigger than that. The city of Toronto has to provide, and we could provide very easy, an alternate vision of Ontario Place, a vision that we could get Torontonians to buy into, that would make sense for Toronto and for Ontario. And if you did that, and if we did that, and if it had enough public and it had broad support amongst the public, I don't believe for 1 minute that the province would, because of some engagement or some contractual issue with a particular entity, they could build the spa in many other places, and I suspect that it would do just as well. It doesn't have to go down on to Ontario Place. So yeah, you could do that. You could use all of those things, all of those little levers, to fight it ad nauseum. But at the end of the day, the provincial government is the provincial government. It just kind of like, with a pencil changes the rules and is able to do what it wants, right? What you could do is provide alternate visions that are connected as well, by the way, to another beautiful property right next door, the exhibition place, because it's all interconnected. And if you provide that vision and that sort of that public space, that public place where people can go, then I think you win the day. I think you win this fight politically way easier than you'll win it with lawyers and with on technical issues.
Phil, I'm just aware of our time, so I'm gonna defer to you for the final question. Go ahead.
Oh, you better lobby me some acceptable topics that I can ask from.
Go ahead.
Um,
Hey, listen, I'm sorry if I've
you
been a
know,
little long-winded in my answers, all right?
no, I appreciate it, especially to have someone who has more of the background knowledge of working in city government, because that's not everyone running for mayor. That's a very few people running for mayor. So I think or at least I'm speaking for Matthew too. We appreciate your knowledge.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. I spent a long time acquiring it.
You know what? I don't know. I'm trying to. I'd prepared so well my other questions. They came so naturally to me, and now I'm at a loss.
Let me so let me fill in some airtime here while you go back to the questions you want to. So a housing plan. So I'm listening to all these folks talk about creating these grand housing plans that basically go for naught, right? Because all of the plans are reliant on two things. One, a city money that the city doesn't have and will not have going forward, irrespective of these incremental little tax increases here and there or whatever people are talking about. And the second thing is housing plans that are dependent on developer benevolence, either by cutting into their profit margins or trying to extract affordability out of increased densities in projects. Okay, by giving them more height, more density, you hope that that they're going to create a few affordable units for you. And so we've taken that approach, and a lot of the housing plans that are being proposed now continue in that approach. And the reason why we've built basically zero homes with that approach is it's too complicated and too difficult, basically, to extract affordable units from that formula. Where and we've been trying to do that since we declared these housing sites vacant in 2019, and now it's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years later, and we've still we've built zero housing basically as part of the City of Toronto's Housing Now program. We have this beautiful model of housing up at York University. I don't know if you folks are familiar with it. It's called the Quad. So York University at the south end of the campus sort of put up these lands, long-term leases to a housing provider, and they built student housing. When they first came out on the market, they were around $1,000 a unit with basically no subsidy whatsoever, and even basically with lease payments on the land, right? They're now, those units I think are renting for about at the top end about $1,200 a month. They're smaller units, but they have kitchenettes, they have washer dryer, they have they're really nice little apartments. That's a model that is out there, that is created, that exists, and with our contribution of land as a city to that form of housing, which is conducive to shelters, transitional housing, seniors housing, and smaller, family unit type housing. We could be building thousands of those within a couple of years with basically no city money, zero city money, just the land, the waiving of fees, some tax savings over a portion of the life of the project themselves. We could be building those things for under, and getting them to market under $1,000 a month. That's affordable. That's real. It's doable. The product exists. No city money, just city land, and it's already out there, right? And it would be so easy to do. And that's what I'm proposing we do on some of the city sites that we have declared surplus. And that housing, that form of housing, could be up and occupied within a couple of years. It won't take another decade, before somebody, develops the plans, figures out how to do it. And the other thing that where our housing is stuck now, it's stuck in a shifting market. Construction materials have escalated in value. Labor costs have escalated in value. Interest rates have escalated to the point where, and that's why housing now is on the rocks, and it just kind of like it's not producing any housing anymore. So this plan that was cobbled together by Lau and others, and that has been touted by them, promoted by them, sold to all of us by them, has produced basically 0 units of housing, and will probably continue to produce 0 units of housing for the foreseeable future. Like, we need to change tracks. People are in desperate need of housing now. We could build it now. We could build it, today without all of that rancor. We should get on with it. Perruzza for mayor.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I have landed on a thought, but I feel like this could end up being a very quick question if the answer is simply no. And I guess it's really, the situation going on with the Eglinton LRT with Metrolinx. Is there anything in the power of the city, like what can be? I want to say, like, what can be done, because the whole thing just seems to be sloppy and messy. But is that entirely provincial? Do we have any power in that situation?
We've only got the power of public opinion. So as a city, well, yeah, well, you know what? But it's a very, very, it's an incredibly powerful power, if used properly and by the right folks. So the power there is that what we need to do is we need to make sure that the provincial government steps in. Otherwise, this isn't going to get resolved for a long, long time. So what happens is, when you hand over these big public works projects to private companies, so irrespective of how you tender them, when you tender them in this way, in the way that these folks have done it, is you get a buildup in terms of disputes. We had to dig deeper there. We encountered piping there. We had to move services there. There was a delay here because we weren't able to do the work in the way we had envisioned to do the work. So there was this big delay in being able to deliver the project. And the other thing that really happens on these projects is there's a huge escalation in costs over time. So you start off doing this thing, and a meter of concrete is costing you X. So you build into that contract, you build in certain number of years to say the price of concrete is going to increase to this level. But when all of a sudden something happens, like you get a war in the Ukraine, for example, and all of a sudden all your steel is coming from China in large part, because you can't get it from your other sort of supply chain anymore. And the price, for example, in the period of 6 months increases 3,000%, right? You hadn't anticipated that, right? And you hadn't sort of, taken note of that. So that those become massive disputes, contractual disputes with the with the builder, essentially here, which is Metrolinx. So all of a sudden you got this massive price tag of disputes at the end of it, and really the only so the leverage that the contractors have is how do we whittle that down? How do you guys pay us out before we deliver the project, right? Because once we deliver the project, we're in the courts for years and years after that, and most of it. Most of the money there will be eaten up by lawyers and consultants and the people that that are hired to fight those things. So first, these contracts don't work. We shouldn't do it that way. I think we did it much better with the TTC when we expanded the Spadina subway up to Vaughan, where the TTC was the project manager and contractor. It issued much smaller contracts to individual contractors for different components of the work. When one contractor didn't work, they fired that guy, hired another guy. When one guy couldn't tunnel under the Schulich School of Business because they were coming too close to the foundation, they went out and got a mining contractor to come in and kind of like had and dig the tunnel there where they couldn't do the same kind of boring. But you know what? At the end of it, you're able to deliver the project and be able to settle a lot of those disputes because you're doing it in much smaller bites. With Eglinton, the way that the government kind of they basically set themselves up to fail. So what we need to do now as a city is we need to say, look, don't care what it is. The government needs to step in, finish the project, and then figure out who is responsible for what later on. You guys go fight it out for as long as you like later. You know, put up some of the money so that the consortium is comfortable in knowing that that if they are owed some monies out there, that they'll be able to access it in some way. You know, build in whatever arbitration process you want to do that you can agree to settle some of those things. But now what you need to do for us is you need to deliver the project and you need to finish it and you need to open it up to the public because you've held the city of Toronto ransom for far too long. You've killed all kinds of businesses along the route. You've disrupted the economy of the city, you know, through the life of the project in a very, very harsh and hard way. So yeah, that's what the city of Toronto needs to do. It needs to step in and needs to say, don't care, folks. You got a problem here, you go figure it out, but finish the project. Get off our roadway. Because and then yes, we do have some levers as it relates to permits and things like that. For road closures, we can make it harder for them. It does put some pressure on them to sort of, you know, come to their senses. But at the end of the day, it's really it's the power of public opinion. It's the power of the public. And if we can sort of turn that to a situation where you know, the premier and the government is going to wear the fiasco and wear it in a hard way. I think that's the influence that we have there and an influence that we can exercise for sure. And it's real. It's not it's not some pie in the sky thing where we're going to sue them for billions of dollars and you know, 20 years from now when that lawsuit is resolved and the lawyers have eaten up all the money, figure out how to give a few pennies to some businesses that long ago disappeared, right?
Councillor, I realize that we're kind of over our time that I did say that this was going to take, but if you'll begrudge me one more question, I just thought of a great one actually.
Hey, listen, you guys could always I was the first. You could always bring me back.
I would love to bring you back. Even
happy to have you back.
Absolutely. My question's about FIFA. You know, in the newspapers, they state that MLSE is going to reap all the benefit and the city's going to be stuck with all the costs. And I'm just wondering, what's your feeling on that? I'm unaware of if you did vote, how you voted, but I'd love to hear anything that you want to say about the FIFA deal.
So remember, I said earlier on, councillors propose, mayors dispose.
Yes.
So yes, I supported the FIFA deal. I think we could have negotiated a better deal. I think there's some gaps there where we could have done better. But overall, I look at it and the tournament. You know, it's a magnificent tournament. It puts you know, soccer as a game on the map. It puts Toronto, you know, gives us a huge spotlight during one of the biggest sporting events on the globe. It'll bring you know, hundreds of millions of dollars in you know, in income and in tourist dollars into the city, and just for sport itself and for young people, what it does. I looked at, so I have a little boy, just turned 8, and he got to see the World Cup there in Qatar that they had. And he absolutely became a massive fan of soccer. You know, it's like all soccer. he walks around with a soccer ball. He now he knows the soccer stars, and Messi and Di Maria, and Ronaldo and all the rest of it. I it's just it's amazing stuff, right? And to deny kids like that, those dreams and the ability to say, man, it happened here, right? I just it's too powerful a temptation, and that's why I supported it. But sure, could we have done better there in terms of the deal? I suppose we could have, because we are putting a lot into it. Some of it is going to be very, very useful. Some of it is going to be very good. Some of the improvements that we're going to make to the field and the facilities here are going to be great for soccer going forward as well. So yeah, you can always second guess yourself, but I'm a happy supporter. Okay.
Hey, that sounds good to me. I want to thank you so much for coming on and letting us know what a Mayor Perruzza government would look like. Um, Anything that you want to say to our listeners directly? We're big in Ontario, because it's a Toronto podcast.
Yeah.
Anything that you want to say to the voters, why they should vote for you? Don't forget to include your website, and anything else you want to say. The floor is yours, my friend.
Well, thank you so much. Just basically to recap, my campaign is about affordability. I'm saying no to property tax increases while Torontonians are having a sort of a difficult time. After the COVID crisis, during this recovery, I'm saying no to any fee or TTC fare increases. And what I am saying yes to is a new deal with the provincial government. We currently collect $2.2 billion of monies that we turn over to them out of property taxes. That has to stop. We can't afford that anymore. And it's crazy for us to, perpetually increase property taxes for people, whether you own a home or you rent. You rent 20% of your rental. 20% of your rent goes towards paying your property taxes. And it's a little known fact that tenants disproportionately pay a higher rate of property tax than people who live in single family housing generally. So I'm saying that, and the other thing that I believe is really, really important, and we haven't paid a lot of attention to during this campaign is the benefit of experience. As you said earlier, your in-depth knowledge of how the city works, but it's not just that. The experience that allows you to sit there and make decisions and deals that are better. We often, I've sat in the room with, I believe 4 mayors now: Lastman, Miller, Ford, and Tory, when they've taken good decisions and bad decisions. And I can tell you, I've seen the good decisions. I've seen when they've made the bad decisions and how they could have done them differently. And I think what you get from a Perruzza mayoralty going forward is you get the application of that experience to make sure that the bad decisions, the bad deals, that we avoid the bad decisions, that we avoid the bad deals, where we just sink money into things that never bear any fruit. So that's what you would get from a Perruzza.
That sounds amazing. And again, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and you took us to school today. Like, that was amazing. And we wish you nothing but luck on the campaign trail. We're excited. We're excited for this election. We get a fresh reset, and we're excited for the city of Toronto finally to get it right this time.
Well, this is it. Maybe you can get the polling outfits that are polling out, supposedly the polling out companies, to add my name to the polling thing, right? Well, yeah. Don't add me as an attachment at the end of the thing where it falls off the table. Add me in the middle somewhere, right? Add Perruzza. Test it.
Well, funnily enough, we actually talked about doing our own polling because we don't trust the polling that happens by the media. But we're still working on that issue.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And if you do that, I don't say, add me to the top of the list, but put me somewhere there where somebody doesn't have to stay on the phone for 20 minutes before they can push the button on your name. All right.
That sounds good. Thank you again so much
Uh,
for coming on.
Matthew, Philip, it's been a pleasure. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to expound about city issues to some degree.
And we trust that you'll spread the word to the other councillors. I'd love to have them all on.
Absolutely. I'll explain. I'll let them know what a wonderful experience it's been, right, and what an opportunity it will be for them.
Thank you so much again.
All
Have
right.
a great night.
Listen, you too, guys. Thank you so much. Take care.